Jensen,
Here.
Bobby Creighton,
Here.
Bill Chacino,
Here.
Ashley Morrow,
Here.
Rebecca Kurt,
Here.
Alan Cone,
Here.
Kathleen Shanahan,
Here.
Ron Cristaldi,
Here.
Sue Carlton,
Here.
Allison Hewitt.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to public comment. We have anybody excited for public comment?
Any public speakers?
Public comment?
If you don't mind, so we do a live stream, give you a chance to listen to my viewers.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Chris Soto. I am a lifelong resident of Tampa and a proud graduate of the University of South Florida. Professionally, I work as a security engineer. In my world, we don't just hope things work, right? We build resilient systems and it's designed to identify and mitigate single points of failure. I'm looking at our city charter through that same lens tonight. To me, this charter isn't just a source of legal, but it's the source code for our city's government, and right now that source code needs a bit of an update. Growing up here, I've always loved that Tampa is a city of fusion. Our iconic Cuban sandwich is a perfect example. They mix of Cuban, Spanish, and Italian, and even German influences all fused together. But as many of you know, in order for that sandwich to work, each of the flavors must remain distinct. If these flavors begin to fuse together, we start to lose the balance. The same can be said for our city. As Madison and Hamilton argued in the Federalist Papers, the executive and legislative branches must be distinct to prevent the consolidation of power. When those lines blur, the recipe for our democracy begins to fail. To restore that balance and protect the working class, I'm advocating for 3 specific system safeguards. The first one, an independent consul attorney. In engineering, you never want one person controlling both access and audits. The consul needs its own legal voice to ensure that the separation of powers is true. Sharing an attorney with the mayor creates a single point of failure for our checks and balances. The second one, a mayor term limit. While we have consecutive term limits, we lack a lifetime limit. Just as we need to refresh security credentials to keep the system safe, we need to refresh our city's leadership every 8 years to ensure the new recipes and fresh ideas that Tampa deserves. Third, an objective salary formula. Let's take the politics out of pay. By using an independent formula, we ensure that our leaders stay focused on service and not the optics of voting for their own races. And to close off, George Washington warned us about the dangers of over-concentrated authority. As a resident invested in the long-term future of Tampa, I urge you to put these safeguards in the 2027 ballot. Let's give Tampa a government that is as secure, resilient, and authentically balanced as the heritage that we celebrate. Thank you for your time and for your service.
We have next for public comment. Anyone in the audience? All right, thank you. That's everything for public comment. Next, I'd like to move to approve the minutes from February 24th.
Yep.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Then we'll go to.
Did you say anything?
Any edits or any discussion? Yes.
Maybe I missed this, or I need a memory refresh, but part 2, ascertain department head residency requirement and decide if same should be applied to the mayor. I didn't see that on the notes you took on the board. I'm not sure. Maybe I just lost that part of the discussion. Does anybody recall that first?
Are you talking about the picture?
On this page where it has starts up review and discuss potential amendments. It's number 2.
I know we talked about it with respect to, right? But that wasn't covered last meeting.
Okay, Rebecca?
feel free to disagree, but my memory was that we had said that we wanted, once we had decided what we thought was appropriate, we wanted to reflect on that for the dispositions that held it.
That's consistent with my memory. I don't recall the time with the mayor was involved. Good catch.
Would it be worth to just broaden this to the sake of the minutes without like?
Just want to make sure it's exception like this.
Yeah, no, let me go back and confirm this. It might be a good catch.
I'd just eliminate the requirement and decide if the same should be applied to the mayor. We did discuss the residence requirements. Not last meeting though. 2 meetings ago.
We talked about it with the clerk, I don't remember if we talked about it with the mayor. I wish I had bigger brain, but there's a lot to cover. What would you like to do with this? Would you like to just broaden the statement and remove the mayor? Would that be okay if you wanted, as a meant to change? I can do that, and I'll double check my notes, guys.
Okay. Thanks for catching that.
I think Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
I just have one other one, which is 2015 riding while black, locally it's known as biking while black, so just for consistency, for search terms, et cetera.
5 more for that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
All right, next. Any other edits or amendments to minutes?
So, I'll amend the motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion been made by the second, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And it moves.
thank you. I have one thing to cover before we allow for our city attorney Scott Study to join us. Thank you. Let me do that now. But we got through all the other stuff. Better, faster. So let me do that now. Sorry, guys. Oh. Good joke, no one heard it. So, please keep an eye on this, because A, I wanna make sure you're aware, B, I wanna make sure I haven't missed anything. And C, as the next slide will show, it really constitutes our progress, which we've made quite a bit of, and we have more to make, okay? So. All right, this is a recap. Can I need
If you're-
I apologize.
Rob, you're okay.
You can speak. So what I've done here, and I'll continue to do this, is I'm going to summarize this for you every time we meet. So you will see sections where the group has essentially said, looks good, we don't want to touch it. Others where we said, clearly we need a change. So far they've been small but important to you. More information needed is resulting in things like inviting the city attorney today. And then revisited, I went through my notes at the time, and I don't remember what you guys really decided, or maybe you didn't decide, and it was on me for not asking that question. So we've gotten through 4, and then the kind of the prelim 5.01, but in process, the A, B, C, all the way through to E, we're gonna work on that today. So those will be reflected here too. My point being, we'll always have a running tally where we stand. There'll be a point in time when I can start to answer the questions you raised in the beginning, which is when are we done? I don't know exactly, but this gives us a sense, right? As things start moving into these 2 columns and we're pushing through, then we do what we suggested, Ron, and we ratify what we came up with before, and we really see what's left. So more to come, but I just want to let you know I'm trying to track it and organize it for you. Okay, so before we jump into here, in respect to Scott's time, I do want to give the floor to him. If we look at, and I have to open it on here, but we look at our order, 501A is about the city attorney, so your timing is impeccable, and thank you for coming. I did already share with everyone that originally we invited the city attorney and the council attorney to join us. Scott is here, so obviously he's joining us. Martin sent a memo that I shared with everyone with his reasons for not coming today. Please take a look, that's in your inbox, but at least we have Scott. Ideally, you were going to do both.
I didn't see that. I didn't receive it.
I didn't even, I was in my on
I don't recall seeing.
I will double check.
with that lady that said she was posting stuff, I don't know where they're going.
I don't have. Was it SharePoint or email?
No, what I do is I use, when you have SharePoint, you have an automatic distribution list of members, and it actually fills in, say, CRC Commission. I put that in and then I hit send. What I might need to do, this is technology, sometimes if you don't expand the SharePoint list, it perhaps is going to a different email. I will double check that and send it to you. But Martin didn't get the authorization to join us, so my apologies. Now I know why when you asked me that question, and I referenced the prior email, you haven't seen it. So I think it's on me. What I need to do is I need to expand that distribution and it goes to the proper place. I will revisit everyone I sent to you to make sure I did that. I know I did that on at least a couple, but I'll check that, so I apologize.
Is there not just like a single email address that goes to all of us?
That's what this is essentially. But if I don't expand it, you know how you see like a group? And then if you don't hit the plus sign and it becomes 18 people or 12 people.
Oh, so there is.
What will happen is I have a feeling it goes to another type of email that you don't see, but it just dawned on me when you guys said that I wasn't routinely doing that. So I will resend that.
Right.
But luckily you got the one with the minutes and some of those things I sent right after. It's just a couple of others. Since then, now I have to double check. I sent the information about the council attorney. I also forwarded a great deal of useful information from Bobby with links to things I saved from your emails in the SharePoint. But immediately after this, or tomorrow morning, I'll double check and resend everything to make sure that doesn't happen again. So
I'm sorry, what did the council attorney say then, since we weren't there last time?
essentially, he wasn't authorized by the council to attend, so we can't this time. I'm summarizing.
Was that request put to the council?
Yes, by him as far as I'm concerned, yes, as far as I know. Yes.
Yeah, I watched the discussion, and I think when they saw that we were entertaining removing the position, they directed it to not.
So apologies for the confusion on that, exactly what I'm trying to avoid, so. In any case, before we start getting into the guts, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to interact with Scott. He's here, so he can finish up with you guys, and even if he desires to stay. But I want to pass the floor to I did. I know that we're talking about this topic, so what I can do is I'll pull up that section, 501A, just to show you the summary bullet points, and I'll read it to you, Scott, if that works with you. Thank you. While I try to figure out things that well, you can't see all of it. But I need to leave it here so you can at least see what's there. But this is the section where we cover this topic. So if you're digging into these questions or the content with Scott, honestly, if you're keeping a better conversation. So, questions?
Do I stand up here, I guess?
Yeah, sure.
Do it.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Scott Stead, I'm the city attorney. In this job, whopping 9 weeks, but I'm already well into the job. I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I thought just a couple opening comments, and then I'm here to really answer questions. But I just handed out a couple of things. Here's how the office is oriented. But I think what's really interesting to me, because I'm still learning about it, is all the things we do. And you'll see that there's 23 lawyers in the office. I know a lot of issues, maybe political, but day in and day out, we're dealing with litigations, human resources, you name it, police officers. Most of my day is dealing with city issues, legal issues, land use issues. It's truly you name it, we deal with it. And that's really the focus. When I say the focus, whatever kind of before you that day. Yes, we have certainly interaction a lot with the mayor's office and city council, but really a lot of the time is just dealing with business of the city. But with that, I'm really here to answer questions and how do we want to proceed.
I'm Chair, if I could.
Yes, I think, well, so during the facilitation
Yeah.
part, Ron's gonna be.
Just we'll kind of follow what we've been doing, one person at a time, and just have the discussions, right?
I'm happy to recognize them too. Go ahead, perfect. Sure.
First, thank you for being here. We know you've got a heavy load right now and taking time to come and meet with us. I think I speak for the whole committee, for a lot of us. I appreciate that. Thank you for producing these materials that are super helpful here. And I want to preface my question by saying I've known Marty for probably 20 years. He's a fantastic guy, a lawyer. And I, for one, fully support the fact that there's someone in city council meetings providing good advice to them. Marty was Ken's predecessor as counsel to this group during the last cover.
Who's Marty? I'm sorry, I don't.
Marty Selby is the individual who sits as the city council's attorney.
Who's listening, don't know Marty.
Sorry. My question, and I think one of the things we were talking about that is sort of twofold. When you consider who your client is as a city attorney, is it the city of Tampa or is it the mayor's office? And the reason we're, I think, struggling with that question a little bit is we were talking a little bit about why there's someone outside this org chart that's also a city employee representing the city's legal interests. And the second part of the question is what's the interaction that you and your office have with Marty? How does that work?
Okay, well, a couple of big questions here. So let me try to answer it. So first of all, it's clear to me that the city attorney's office and myself, the client is the municipal corporation. That's the city itself. In the end, we give advice based on what's best for the city. as the charter says, though, the city is made up of two branches of government, and that being the mayor's office and city council departments, and as the charter just says, we advise the city of Tampa. We certainly advise the mayor in that capacity, city council, and all the departments. So it's, I know that's just a broad answer, but that's my experience the last 9 weeks. I mean, the issues that come up deal with the city of Tampa. And I think you were saying about the mayor. I will say, now I'm jumping ahead a little bit, or certainly the administration, when we're working on a number of things, you're working with the administration because they're working up the contracts, they're working, you know, the mayor's over all these departments. So we're certainly working closely with the mayor, with the executive branch, because that's the day in and day out work. So that's what we're doing day in and day out. We're working on matters for the city primarily, and the mayor oversees the administrative matters of the city. So we're working closely with the mayor's office, but not for the mayor individually. And I would say, you know, and that's where my experience, again, you're working with the administration, and the administration manages all those departments. And certainly, for instance, like you work on a contract for a sale of a $10 million building or something, you're working with the staff and the administration. You know, I go to a meeting every Monday with the mayor where they go through what's going on that week. When I'm there, we're talking about what's the game plan, what needs to be done. And then certainly when that contract's ready to go, it's got to go to city council. So again, we're thinking, working up the contract, making sure it's legal and you know, in the best interest of the city, certainly with working with the mayor administration to work that up, and working with city council to bring them up to speed so they understand, you know, what's that contract, what's involved, sometimes meeting with them individually, you know, and bringing that to fruition. So I'm not just running, might have come off, right? So I'm just trying to use that as an example. So, you know, it's not, again, I'm gonna go 9 weeks and I'm not gonna try to use that as an excuse, but that's how it works. I mean, that's been my experience. You know, and you know, that's the goal of everybody in the office, is to, you know, get the work of the city done. And certainly, you know, there's the two parts of that. I'm not going to say two-headed because I'm not going to use that term. I just back down from that. But there's, you know, there's two entities involved, and you have to work with those two entities. But did I answer both questions?
Yes,
Okay. Sir.
What do you do when there is contradicting positions or requests to be made at the city attorney's office? Like the city council wants something and the mayor opposes it, or vice versa?
Okay, again, my experience is I haven't had that experience yet. When you say they oppose, I guess there's, again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. First of all, well, I'm thinking of the response. The mayor is the administrator of the city. So when it comes to administrating, there shouldn't really be a conflict because the mayor gives the direction on working up a contract or direction. The city council doesn't have to agree ultimately with it. And there's the political issues, which is not, you know, it's not really up to me to get involved in those political issues. So there's, the city council may disagree ultimately on a contract, but that means they'll just deny it. So I just haven't yet experienced, frankly, where city council's giving direction on one issue and the mayor's giving another. So I understand that can happen, but that just I don't have that experience yet. And, you know, I if it's on the political part, if it's not legal, my answer you two have to work it out. So that is actually my answer. If it's a political issue, then I'm not the arbitrator for the political issue of, you know, we want to do one thing, the mayor wants to do something else. So I would try to stay out of that issue.
You know, I kind of analogize it to, I have a client, company A, and they've got a sales department, right? They've got a marketing department. And this is a real life example, and they are sometimes in conflict with one another, right? Sales wants one thing and marketing wants another. My client's the corporation, right? So at the end of the day, I may have the head of sales and the head of marketing in a room with the president of the company. They're exchanging different positions and opinions, and at the end of the day, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna advise my client on what's the best interest of that corporation. I'm not gonna advise on what's the best interest of the sales department, the marketing department. I'm gonna look and say, here's my legal opinion on this analysis. It's best interest, and your overarching answer always has to be found in the ethical obligation to what? Your client. The client is the entity in my case, and I don't represent municipalities. But it's, I would suggest to the group, it's the same analysis, the way you look at that. There's gonna be conflict, right? And you advise what? Based on the best interest of the city. And you don't pick sides. It's not a picking sides. It's your question comes back to your legal analysis as a lawyer. Answer is, in my opinion, A. Whatever A, you know, one of the two is not gonna like A, but whoever, you know, that wouldn't matter, so.
First of all, thank you for coming. So who signs the contracts?
The city council has to approve it, the chair signs it, then the mayor signs
So you have to have both
it.
signatures
So
on
they
it.
have to, both entities have to approve it, so.
And then if the contract goes into whatever abeyance, who litigates it?
If we know that it's a dispute, the city attorney's office does, on behalf of the city.
Okay.
And the city is the entity, it's not the mayor or the city council. If there's a dispute over the contract, the entity is the city of town.
And my last question, if the city council does not sign a contract, it does not go forward?
Doesn't go forward.
Thank you.
I mean, they have the final word, so it doesn't happen. By the way, with exception if the scenario we just talked, they might have assigned responsibility for small contracts or something, but if it has to go to the city council, if they don't approve it, it's done.
So not every contract goes to the city council?
Yes, they have, it has to, I'm just thinking, again, this is where I'm not absolutely clear. There's some things that they might have delegated saying it's below a certain number, like I know, for instance, and I say in contract, we have settlement authority, like I have settlement authority for less than 100,000, it doesn't have to go to city council. But they ultimately did, but they determined, we don't want to hear all of them.
Yeah.
So I think that scenario may fit the contracts too, that's all. But they have the authority, if they assigned it for certain things, that's all. Otherwise, they absolutely have the authority.
I have another question. The city council, you know, we've all read it, has their own lawyer, right? And I know you've only been here 9 weeks, but could you just give us an overview of the working relationship between the city attorney and the city council attorney? You know, from what you've gathered, a good relationship, antagonistic, you know, how's it been?
No, I think it's been good so far, and as a matter of fact, there's an example. We had, within 2 weeks I was here, there was an issue with someone that attended city council that was escorted out. And we decided the best thing is to look at the city council rules. And Marty, who's the city council's counsel, we've been working collaboratively.
I got you.
Yeah, thank you. And as a matter of fact, the CRA, which is the Community Redevelopment Agency, that's also city council, but they sit as the CRA. They have an attorney, so the CRA's attorney, the city attorney's office, and Marty have been working together to amend those rules to tighten them up a little bit. And Marty is ultimately, by the way, responsible for them. But what's interesting is if something happens pursuant to those rules and the city gets sued, even though Marty drafts the rules and we work collaboratively, we still have to defend city council. So there's definitely a relationship there. Now, again, I think over time, and I have to be careful because I just know of things, you know, there might have been some tension there because there's just naturally some tension. City council, you know, but I don't think it's been in a situation where it hasn't been worked out. At least I'm not aware of it. So I can say right now, I'm comfortable that working well together. And at this point, I haven't seen an issue. Sir?
Just curious, do you find the role of city council attorney, do you find that role in relation to the city attorney to be confusing?
No, because I think it's pretty defined at this point. It has come to it, and again, before, is my recollection, in some communities, the city attorney's office provides that attorney. And the history of the city, though, is the city council at some point said, do you want our own attorney? And, you know, Marty definitely, he's there, he definitely helps on parliamentary issues, you know, conflict issues. So I think it makes sense. I mean, I'm saying it's working from my perspective. I'm not certainly, I don't want to leave with any impression that I think there's a problem. It's certainly not from my perspective.
Marty's client is the city as well, he's just advising.
He's hired by the city, but I would say his attorney, his client is the city council, right? It's city council, yes, it's a unique, and by the way, it's unique, and there's, you know, there's a lot of case law out there, but we have city of Tampa has a slightly unique situation, and that's where the city council has their own attorney that is in the charter. So
I actually spoke with, because you asked me that question, or asked me, Bill, who's the city council's client, right? And I said, let me flush it out. And I actually, you know, reread the charter, but I also ran it by Florida Bar Council, Ethics Council, who happens to work for us now. I said, okay, you're a conflicts guy, read this. Just, you know, I have it in, and, you know, after reading the language of what it says, at least in his mind, in my mind, there's no question. The city council attorney's client is city council. An employer who's paying his check doesn't make him the client. But, you know, maybe people could differ on that.
But is the city council legally an entity?
Doesn't matter what, is it an entity, it's a branch of government. It's well, it's the legislative branch of the city of Tampa.
but I understand where Ron's going. I'm not disagreeing with you. The city of Tampa clearly is an entity. That, you know, that's the entity we're talking about.
Corporation.
It's a municipal corporation, right? City council is part of the governing body, the two governing bodies. Where I also understand your point, is that really a legal entity? But I do think it's an entity sufficient enough to have its own council, and that's not a great answer, but I do think it has it may not be a entity that gets like the municipal corporation, but I think at least by the charter, the city council's attorney is they have their own attorney. So
Bill, from that perspective, and there's a difference between what the charter says, right? The charter is what the city's created, position that's created. But from a legal ethical perspective, his client is the council. That could be, for instance, he could file a lawsuit against the city on behalf of council and not have a legal
Not
conflict.
what the charter says. The charter specifically says he can't do that,
Yeah.
or she can't do that. So it's very clear in what the city council attorney's powers are. So, you know.
Rebecca was next, kind of, if you don't mind.
No, I'm just-
It's Rebecca, and then you, so, Rebecca.
Okay, I wasn't sure I was next, but if I, as long as I remember to do that. So again, I understand, city council needs to have representation. And, Mr. Shelby has done that ably since, well, before I was at the city. And I have a lot of respect for him. We got certified together, he's a fabulous attorney. Questions, pretty specific, kind of going between what Bill and Lon was talking about. The charter says that city council can hire, it used to say appoint, hire their own counsel. There are limitations on his representation for them. And it also says that the city attorney is the final legal voice
Right,
for
the city.
the city. So my question has to do with qualified immunity, and this may be a question more for the Florida Bar than you, Scott. Like, I know that you've had a lot of practice in government areas over the years and are really qualified, but it's a pretty nuanced question. So do people know what qualified immunity is?
Can you explain, because I'm not aware.
I'm not.
Okay, so I am aware, but I don't want this to be like from a lawyer, because I don't advise you guys, so I'm gonna just kind of, in layman's term, when you are a city council member, mayor, us, working in your position representing the city, you are not able to be sued individually because you are granted qualified immunity. Now, I'm not gonna go back to the beginning of time, the sovereign immunity and how it's limited, but you are given qualified immunity if in fact your actions are within your role and are lawful. So this kind of also goes into step 2 of the question. But if, for example, the city council attorney, whoever that may be, were to give advice to a city council as a body, and then I'm not going to go into representing individually, as a body, that differs from what the city attorney says, and the city council members act on that, and there's litigation, they've acted against the advice of the final advice of the city attorney, but within the advice of their council attorney. Do they have qualified immunity? And would the city be expected to represent them in that case?
Well, Rebecca, you didn't ask a tough question.
It may be something that's more appropriate for the Florida Bar to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm gonna.
That's out there every time there's a
That's an
conflict.
interesting, actually, okay, you just asked a great question that I don't necessarily know the answer to. Keep in mind too, I was just thinking as the city council, I always come back to the city council also operates as the CRA, Community Development Act. They have, that as their own attorney. And it's a dependent district and it's really city council sitting as the CRA, so.
But
I
they are
think-
not the city.
Right, but I think Cliff Shepherd, who's their attorney, can give them advice. I think you raised an interesting question, if there's different advice on an issue that could create a sovereign immunity, qualified immunity. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean,
It's a time-
it's a tough question. But to me, everyone's talking about this, I don't know what everyone's talking about. City council deserves great representation.
Right.
They do, and they should be able to rely upon that representation. But can they rely upon it if it does not provide them qualified immunity? And I'm not saying
Well,
what
I
the
think-
answer is, I'm just saying it's an important question when you're considering how the charter is set up.
But here's the, if I may, I think if, under the charter, it says he represents them, if he gives advice, you raised a different question, I thought. What if I gave different advice than him?
Yes.
That's, I think if he gave his advice, period, they would have immunity. Your issue is, I give a different advice than he does. Don't know the answer to that.
And I think
That
that's
would,
what happens.
but I would also,
Very
not that
rarely.
not that I'm
But it
aware of.
does.
Not that I'm aware of, but I will tell you that if it was, I would personally figure out not to have that be. I think Marty and I would figure out how to not do that for the benefit of the council, but that's just what I'm saying.
I think both you gentlemen would do your best to do that as well, but it's still.
I'm gonna be careful because 2 other individuals are gonna ask questions and I wanna make sure if I'm back doing this, you're serving you or were you waiting?
Yeah.
Yeah, please, you don't mind?
And I don't think this is as important as yours, but, and I know the languages between the city charter and the US Constitution are different. But is the issue here akin to, there are certain things the Department of Justice does to represent the United States government that both the executive branch and Congress can agree upon the DOJ doing. On the other hand, you would not expect Congress in either, House of Congress to rely on Pam Bondi for legal advice, because there are obviously conflicting issues there. Is that, in essence, what we're dealing with here, that it is, logical for the city council to have their own attorney to give their best advice to the city council. And the city attorney has that hybrid responsibility to representing the city, but also, there could be members of the city council who are concerned that the city attorney really works for the mayor, and we need our own legal opinion, or at least our own legal advice, and that's a little common.
Well,
Yes.
okay, well, I don't wanna speak for city council members, because I think, some of these questions arise because some city council members, things that happened in the past are concerned. So I wanna be careful of not, treading on their, or suggesting I have all the answers, but right now, I still feel like I have a responsibility to the city, regardless of what the mayor or city council is. It's either, my advice is my advice to the city, whether they either or agree. That's, you just have to, I think, call balls and strikes, people say. And I've found that that's the case. Frankly, I wrote the decision that both the mayor and city council had direction to this. I didn't ask either one. I just said the charter says city is the mayor and city council. They both can give direction to this board. And that, I'm not sure either one liked that decision, but that's what I said. So that's an example. Do we follow me on that? Yeah.
I guess the other question, do we know, was what is the impetus for the discussion in the first place? Was there a specific issue between the city council and the mayor that resulted in differences of opinion between the city council and the city?
I'm gonna say generally, because again, I don't want to speak, because I don't want to misspeak, but I think it related more to the city council individuals that were ultimately left to city council and how that was handled. And, the city council, and that's a tough situation. That's what if, and I want to be careful. There were some issues with behavior of city council, and a couple of them they left. How was that handled? I think that was like the real issue of how does the city attorney, how does the city deal when the city council person might have been alleged to have done something that needs to be dealt with. That's my understanding of kind of where this concern arose. Now, I've also been told that the city attorney went out to separate counsel. There was a conflict and went out and sought separate counsel. I think that's still, again, speaking for people that are concerned, felt that maybe it still wasn't done correctly or whatever. So I don't want to speak for city council members or misconstrue what their concerns are. I think they had concerns, and that's why you're talking about it today. Is that fair? I want to make sure I'm trying to be fair about these issues.
Yeah, you're being very fair. I think, my understanding, I could be wrong on this historically, is under Mayor Iorio's administration, first thing to consider, there's always been a lawyer who sat with city council and give them advice, and that's standard fare, typical. That lawyer historically sat in the city attorney's office, reported up to the city attorney. There was some issues where I believe when I believe it was with Chip Fletcher, or right before Chip Fletcher was the city attorney, where it was roundtable.
We can get into history stuff later, but I don't want to.
Well, it's important, but in any event, my understanding is there was a rub between council and mayor, and council then didn't want their lawyer to be part of the city attorney's office. And so the question I'm asking, so just to be clear to my colleagues here, I absolutely think that there should be somebody sitting giving advice to council. I absolutely have to look at what's an office, and Shelby, I think he's the right person to do that. Question I was asking, and this goes to kind of some of the issues that Rebecca said is, and Bill and I were talking about, is who's the client, right? If the person's, Marty's still sitting there giving advice, but his client is the city of Tampa, then when he gives advice, and I think what the charter says is, if there's a disagreement on advice as to the city attorney's advice supersedes. But I think there's this misperception, and in my opinion, misperception that the city council's got their own lawyer that is independent of the city. And that's where I'm a little hung up as a lawyer, because a board of directors doesn't have an independent lawyer from the company. It's hard for me to wrap my head around if you're representing a corporate entity, which City of Tampa is a public corporation, how you could have the board of directors be a different lawyer than the general counsel to the company, and what happens in a complex situation where there's some disagreement amongst people, as Bill was saying, within the department. Bill, you stated it very succinctly, I think, when you have a marketing department and a sales department. Your advice is what the law is and what's best for the company, and they've got to work it out. Pretty much what you said too. If it's a purely political issue, you say guys can work it out. And that's what I'm just trying to wrap my head around. Not is Marty the right person, or does council need the board, certainly, but we are asked to review the charter, and this is the creature of the charter, right? And apparently I don't know for sure how it came about. Maybe we need to figure out how it came about. That's my question: is it creating the situation that causes more diversity, spend city resources when we've got diverging lawyers within the city? In my opinion, both represent the city, giving different opinions. It causes this, perpetuates this environment that we have where the mayor and the council are doing this a lot. Good council, good corporate council, good city council will help bring those people together. I know that you and Marty are both great lawyers, and I'm sure you collaborate to do that. That was my question. That was just, why did we create it in the statute? It doesn't make sense to me from a legal ethics perspective.
But Ron, what are you suggesting?
Yeah.
Take it to one step further. Are you suggesting, because you raised it before,
I would think that the council who sits there, that would be part of the city attorney's office, and they would be, because they'd be part of the same law firm.
I'm not putting you on cross-examination, then you would suggest a modification to the charter,
I'm not there
eliminating
yet.
any concept that, as I read it, and others I think would read it, that the city council's attorney's client is in fact city council. You're suggesting, right, that no, it would be the city, someone within the city attorney's office. In other words, city council wouldn't go out and hire their own lawyer?
I'm telling you that, Bill, I have a question about that.
Okay.
So I don't want you all to think I'm suggesting that amendment, but that provision, when I read it in the charter, strikes me as being something that's worthy of consideration.
Thinking about talking about.
And I would suggest this, certainly the city council would have the authority to pick their individual who they would like to be with them, right? Because you don't want to put, just like any client can pick their lawyer.
What are you gonna look at the chart of the city attorneys and go, I want her, I want him? That'd be kind of funky.
Just
Something to
like
think about.
if somebody called your firm and said, the marketing department needs advice, and you suggested someone, and they said, I don't want to work with that person, you assign somebody else to it.
Something to talk about.
You've been waiting.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot to respond to, but I'll ask my niche question. There was a case where the city council and the mayor had a dispute. The city council as a body voted to send their recommendation for a city position to the Hillsborough County Legislative Delegation to represent, the city at the state level. The mayor opposed that position and sent a counter memo to the Hillsborough County delegation. The city attorney at that time, ruled is the wrong word, but applying that the mayor speaks for the city and the council's recommendation to the delegation was null and void, essentially because the mayor's power would supersede that. I know the administration has lobbyists, they work in Tallahassee on behalf of the benefit of the city, but that seems to be a legislative matter, if something might come down and affect the laws of the city that the council might have to enforce or respond to. That seems to be a case where there's two branches kind of clearly in conflict, so.
Well, I have to tell you, I don't know the situation, but, I would just say, the way it works now, for the city of Tampa, the mayor basically is the administrator for the city and speaks for the city, unless it's a legislative function and it has to go under the charter to the city council. The mayor speaks for the city, and that's, I want to be careful because I'm not familiar with the situation, but kind of seeing, I would think the city attorney felt that this fell into the operations of the city. And, I know everyone people say this is a strong mayor charter, and people say, well, where does it say that? Well, it doesn't say it, but people construe it to say that, the strong mayor, like in Chicago movie or something, and retains the authority to, like I said, direct, respond to other agencies and other state agencies on behalf of the city. So I'm trying to answer your question but I don't really know the situation. But if the city attorney said that, that's probably because they looked at the charter and said this falls within the mayor's power to make these appointments or direct on behalf of the city, which is, that's what I think would be consistent.
That's a prime example of what I'd be concerned about, because if in that instance you get two divergent opinions, right? I don't know the circumstances, but from what I understood you to say, the city attorney says, that appointment is null and void, and the city council attorney says, no, it's not null and void, and two people show up to the delegation, right? It creates confusion if it's bad for the city. I'm not sure who at that convention will speak on behalf of the city. That's my concern is, we need to act on one set of legal advice of the city. Regardless of who that person is, we need to act on one.
And just to respond, I follow council very closely. I know city council attorneys change, but it's been my observation that very consistently, Attorney Shelley has always deferred, I would say, I can't think of a specific instance where he hasn't deferred to the legal authority of the city attorney. It's, like I said, he's just one man in the position for now. I don't know every case that's coming before the city council, there might be a conflict, but in my view, from what I've seen, it just doesn't seem to really be that much of an issue.
Yeah, my experience is that we're working well together. And Marty, we try to stay in our lanes. That's what we do. That's my term. So, sir.
I don't know if this question could be answered, but has there ever been a conflict between the city council and the mayor that has elevated to the point of going to court? And if that's the case, then who would represent who in court?
All right, so if that happened, I believe I'm pretty clear on this, I have to recuse the office, and the city would have to retain separate counsel for the mayor council. And I've thought about that. So I don't know if it's happened, but if they were somehow litigating and they had standing to bring an action, we're lawyering, can city council, the city is the entity, can city council and the mayor bring an action against each other? I'm comfortable in saying, right now, I'm getting out of it. I'm recusing myself. We're hiring lawyers for both, and I'm staying out of it. So, I'm comfortable saying that answer. By the way, I think I'd have to do it under the bar rules.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Right.
Alan, you'd have to do it.
Right.
The bar rules are very clear. If you, I don't know that there's ever been a time where the mayor and legislative, the city council ever had litigation with one another. So tell me if that happened, but if it ever did, it can never be, adverse to a client.
So you could not have a situation where it's the city council attorney in a courtroom on one side and a city attorney on the other side.
Ever, never.
And I'm sure Marty would say I'm not representing him because he's not a litigator, but by the way, I answered the question before you said it.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
It's great.
Yeah, and I said the
Just wanna
bar,
put it.
you put an emphasis on it, but no, sir, I'm very comfortable saying that that's the situation which would be a conflict, and the answer would be separate council. And I don't know if that's happening.
And I'm not sure if city, I don't know for sure, but I don't think city council would be able to follow, as city, they could follow it on behalf of the city of Tampa. The city of Tampa to be a party to the lawsuit. I'm not, you have to be a person or a legal entity to be a party to a lawsuit. You can't be a fiction or just a amorphous group. And I don't mean that in any way disrespectful. The city council is a very, very, very important group. But I don't know that they would be able to file a lawsuit as city council. They'd have to take action, and it would be the city of Tampa that would be the party.
You would be saying some that if it ever happened, and I'm pretty damn certain that it never did. It's never happened because it can't.
If this is apples and oranges, please tell me. But let's say, for instance, in President Trump's first term, Congress often subpoenaed members of the executive branch for testimony or whatever. The administration fought it, and it was battled out in court. Who represented the administration? Who represented the Congress?
It's a little bit different, because at the federal level, there's 3 branches, and there's a specific judiciary that is set up in the federal government to mediate those disputes. In municipal law, and Ken is here, he knows this stuff better than I do, but cities are set up a little bit like public corporations in a sense. So this charter is kind of our articles of incorporation, or constitution in a way, and we have to rely on the state court system, the federal court system.
There's no municipal judicial branch.
Yeah.
It's just a two-part. It's a
We're legislative
legislative.
from, we can't have it. It's
Correct.
in the Constitution, we can't have it, sir.
Just as an example, that kind of touches on this issue, maybe it's a little bit of a tangent, but in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there was a case where the city council and the mayor sued each other. The mayor had an interim appointment, the council thought that was there for too long, the council chose not to fund those positions in the budget, essentially eliminating them. The mayor sued the city council, stating that they didn't have the authority to do that. And I believe in that case, both of those I know it's a different state and a different situation, but in water rules, I think, apply, ethics everywhere, right? So they had outside counsel to kind of help settle that, and then it's just an interesting anecdote.
Makes sense.
Scott,
Sir,
in your experience, I know it's only been 9 weeks.
that's my excuse.
You said things have been relatively smooth with your relationship and your
Very
representation.
sure that. Go ahead.
If that's the case, do you feel it would be beneficial to have council's attorney under your office? Do you think it would help the city?
You know, I came to say I don't really want to get to that point. I mean,
Sure.
because they don't really wanna. Okay, I'm gonna be honest and say I'm trying to stay out of giving advice on that because I could be criticized because I'm trying to remain neutral.
Mhm.
I think it's a fair question. I'd rather go back and just say it's working fine. Is that fair? I mean, I'm really trying to get answers, guys, and I'm sure, but
No, thank
I'm
you so
also
much.
cognizant of, I'm still living the dream, okay? So I have
You're not
to,
even-
yeah, well, no, it's not, so
Right.
I'll answer it this way, it's working fine now. Is that fair? I'd rather than say would it work better or something, I'd rather just say it's working.
Absolutely fair, and thank you for being here. Maybe we can talk about it when we're finished up, but I think it would be quite necessary to have the chair of council come down and talk to us and explain why it's necessary that they're separate. In lieu of Marty coming down at the council attorney and explaining that himself, maybe we have the chair of council come and explain why that relationship separately is so important. We can discuss after.
But make it clear, I have no criticism. I'm not saying that politically, I'm saying that's my experience. So I'm not trying to curry favor with anyone. It's working based on my experience.
But how would we resolve Rebecca's example, which is a very real example
I
that the council, I mean, there's a vulnerability in the system, and I guess we have to think about how the charter works around the personalities. I sort of believe they should have their own council, you know, I'm an advocate for that, having been involved in government. But it's, at some point, someone signs a contract, someone is responsible, somebody litigates, and there's an entity, and I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, the immunity question is a very real exposure, and I guess my question is there something we need to address to adjust to that? I don't know.
I don't know, I think it's an interesting question. I don't have an answer, and that's, and I'm sitting here because Becca makes a good point. I say me, the city attorney makes the final legal decision for the city. If my advice was different from Marty's, would the city council be exposed because they didn't follow the city attorney's advice, right? Because you get immunity or qualified immunity if you follow the advice of council. Now, I will say, I fully expect, now this is not that we would figure it out. And we would probably have to agree because, and I feel like we would, but that's assuming we figured out that we would agree and whatever my advice would be followed for that reason. Because I was sitting there thinking, you know, council, if you want to make sure you have qualified immunity, you really need to follow counsel of the city attorney. I really feel like we've worked that out. I just, but
Well, you're
I don't know how else you would figure that out.
Professional lawyers, you know, there are some instances, and some might say that's happening in other aspects of government that we're all observing that are not necessarily, so I don't like, you know, what I like to do is have a charter or representation that's outside of the personalities, and I think
Right, I
that's
understand.
that's something we should
Well, maybe,
get further clarification on.
yeah, maybe, I mean, I agree. I don't have a good answer.
That issue can and should be researched.
Yeah.
The analysis, and you answered Rebecca's question. You know, and I don't know, Ken, whether that's gonna be you, me, you know, Ron's an attorney, and that you, Rebecca, can analyze and look at it. If the answer comes down that no, you lose immunity, then we have to address that. Right? If you lose immunity by relying upon city council's lawyer when the city attorney is telling you something differently, then we all should, you know, city council should be really, really aware of that. You never want that situation to happen.
But I would say right now, the example is we're working on the rules collaboratively with all three lawyers to work together to give them the best advice on their rules, and how to deal with unruly people in front of city council.
Who's the third lawyer, I'm sorry?
The CRA, the
Oh, yeah.
Community Redevelopment Act, who's an attorney, again, representing the CRA.
So right now, as it stands, the city attorney has final say
Under the charter.
right now. So even if city council attorney gives something, if they say something different, then they still have final say. But you're saying if they act one.
Right, they may lose their
Final say.
immunity. Their immunity.
Okay.
Now, if I'm city council, I'm gonna say I'm gonna listen to the city attorney's office, but again, I don't wanna diminish that issue, I think it's a great issue.
Right.
But I'm just gonna say, be careful about changing things for a very small situation, right? So don't overcorrect, I mean, I just wanna make sure that's an issue. I didn't really think about it until you raised it, but practically speaking, I'm not sure that's becomes a real issue, but I gotta be careful in that sense. Sort of.
Yeah, 2 points that Garrett brought up that reminded me of some homework that I did. I called David Carr, he was the city council attorney, I think starting in 1979.
Yeah, when I clerked here, David, I haven't seen David forever.
Yeah,
so-
you could just call him up and he'll answer the phone apparently,
Yeah.
that's what I did, I found stuff on the internet.
That's funny you read something from the past.
Yeah. But anyway, he boiled it down, I talked to him, because he was, you know, he wasn't there when the charter was passed, I think he came like right after it was passed in 75, and I think he started in 79. But he boiled it down in terms of where does the city attorney's allegiance lies. He answered the one who brought you, that's kind of what he said. I know every attorney's supposed to be super ethical and, you know, the arbitrators of truth and justice, et cetera, but I mean, we can't ignore the political reality that somebody hired you and can fire, I mean, not you, but hire the city attorney and fire the city attorney, and, you know, one of the constituents that attorney represents is no really no say in the matter, so. Like I get on paper, there's this like really kind of cut and dry situation, but I just feel like we can't ignore the politics of the world that we live in. And the second point was I called a couple former council members about Viking Wall Blacks, we discussed that, I think it was part of my homework, was to learn more about that. And they brought up an issue subsequent to that, which was the creation of a citizen review board. So there was Viking Wall Black, there was this kind of big, scandal, I guess you should say, and one of the responses to that was the city council wanted to create a citizens review board. And if I have my facts right, I was just trying to find an article about it and find the charter amendment related to it, was that council tried to create that board. The mayor said that they didn't have the authority to, and the city attorney at that time sided with the mayor. People helped me out if anyone's familiar with that.
Independent legal advice.
And they got independent legal advice from.
Agreed with what the mayor said.
Right,
They
so.
did not side with the mayor.
So in situations like that, if there's a conflict and they go out and get legal independent advice, is that legal independent advice gonna take it or leave it, or there's the city attorney deferring their kind of decision because of the conflict to whoever wrote the memo to clear the situation up?
Rebecca, do you know the history of this?
I do. And I would hate to speak on behalf of Ms. Randall. So,
Who was the city attorney?
who was the city attorney at the time, sorry, step back. Yes, thank you. It's like using all the acronyms. What she said as a city attorney is what the legal advice is. I think she felt in the interest, now I'm speaking for her, so take it with a grain of salt that I am not her. I believe that as a good city attorney, she saw that there was not a legal conflict, but a differing of opinions of her clients as they're acting in their individual roles for the overall corporate entity, and thought it would be helpful for everyone to feel more comfortable with the situation, to reach out to an attorney that had the respect of everyone, I believe, and who wasn't going to be accused of toting anyone's water. But I don't think in any way was she ceding her charter authority to a third-party lawyer, if that is what the question is.
Just politician, but. I mean, you kind of get specific things, but so in situations like that generally, if there is litigation as a result of the opinion from the external counsel, is it the city attorney's responsibility to represent the city in those cases in litigation?
I'm sorry, didn't
Yeah, who's getting sued here? I guess
The
let me
city is sued because action is taken based upon the advice from the external counsel.
Yeah, no, the city attorney represents that we're defending the city.
He might disagree with
Yeah,
opinion from the
no,
external
I'm-
counsel.
right, I mean, right, if the city gets sued, we defend the city, no matter whether we agree with it. There's advice that I'm sure the city attorney's office has given, it's not been followed. The city gets sued, we then switch hats and say, we agree exactly what the city did, and we're gonna defend it to the hill, right? There's no question in my mind. That's,
I just like the nuance.
all right, nuance it,
I would
please.
like to nuance that one a little bit, which is, what you said is completely 100% correct. I haven't spent time, well, let me put it this way. It happens in a nuanced way in the land use world, when, people are saying you need to look at these three things, the city council, not the city council. A mythical city council says, I'm still going, in the land use world, you have to go by your criteria, and you can't go by a vote of what the citizens say. And so they then made a motion to do it because of what the citizen says. It's not directly against the advice of council, it's within their purview. But if, for example, the city attorney was to say, city mayor, split this, mayor, you cannot tell city council that they are unable to have their budget analyst because that is a charter position, and so you cannot cut that position. And the mayor goes ahead and cuts that, and somebody who has standing sues this rogue mayor who is going clearly against the charter, and against church advice. In those sorts of situations where it's completely outside the scope, that goes back to the issue of qualified immunity. Or if, for example, somebody was accused of voting on a contract for bribery reasons.
Right.
That's not a word. Like there was bribery involved in their decision making. You don't defend somebody who's acting outside of their scope.
Although sometimes
That's not-
you defend them and then there's a determination whether they're outside the scope. I mean, I'm aware of the, it's hard to say when were they outside the scope and not. At some point, if there's a determination, because I know some cities defend it until there's a determination and then they say the damage is on you individually. So,
Exactly, and some organizations say in those situations where the allegations are that you acted out so far outside your scope, that, and the city agrees that if you did that, you are outside your scope, then they recommend that you get outside counsel, because it's very difficult to recoup the costs once they have determined that they are a felon.
and it'll reimburse them if they're determined not to be outside the scope.
Yes.
But I don't wanna, those are very unique circumstances. I'm not suggesting you don't think through those. I don't know how you fix those, by the way. There's some points where, you know, the government, it's complex and there is not necessarily perfect answers to some of these issues that we're bringing up.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to discourage from you trying, but they're difficult. Go ahead, sir. Sorry, Becky.
So are we, is there anything we want to actually amend with this, or like it's, we just having like discussion, just to flesh some stuff out, or? Okay. It's been an hour, so I'm just trying to, I don't want to get 2 hours into this, why did you say something actually, so, okay. Go ahead.
I assume that you know that one of the questions that you were asked by council was whether or not they ought to be able to hire additional staff for the city council attorney. Is that resource available through the city attorney's office to provide external counsel to specifically support the city council
Well,
attorney?
all right,
Does
so-
that not work?
Well, all right, so I want to be careful because obviously maybe a city council member that feels that way. So I don't want to say definitively. I mean, definitely, I'll use the example. We're working on these rules. We're providing help. Marty's responsible for the rules we're working with. If he asks for help, we give him help. That doesn't, but I don't want to speak for him or city council to say he needs more help individually. And by the way, where they don't rely on my office, so. I believe we provide him support, but again, I don't want to speak for the city council members that may feel, regardless of what I say, we still feel that he should have additional backup, because obviously that's a question that perhaps some of them or all of them do. But I'm not trying to not give answers, but I want to be careful of, treading on someone else's concern that I may not have, but they certainly can, so.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering is, procedurally, is Marty able to bring on external counsel
Oh, not now,
without any
no. No,
other
right.
department stepping in to assist with?
Well,
You mean by external counsel, you mean an outside law firm like call Shoemaker, Gunster, and hire us?
Somebody that's not an FTE, which is the request, the requesters should Marty be able to hire full-time employees that are city staff that support his office.
Right, right.
Full-time, hire full-time.
Because you can do either, I mean,
Yes, let me answer, give me the question again, I want to answer it. So right now, I do not believe he has the ability under the charter to hire anyone to help him. In other words, he gets even a paralegal. I mean, maybe the answer is he should have a paralegal, for instance. I think that's not provided for. So whether they want, but he'd have an associate and a younger lawyer, that's not provided for. Is that my answer?
but not under contract, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out, is under contract versus
I don't think he can on the contract.
But you can call your office for help and
Yeah,
say.
yeah, but I want to say, right, you can call my office for help, but I think the issue is, okay, I'm gonna say, and I think some city council members want him to be, ability to be independent. And if he needs resources, not to rely on my office. Now, I'm saying he can, but I think some council members say, we'd like them to have more resources that he controls. Is that fair?
Sure, but even if,
But he can't now, so he couldn't.
but even if he were able to
Oh, okay.
bring somebody on via contract, it would still have to go through the procurement
Yes,
process.
oh,
which
yes,
then-
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? It's-
Yes.
And I think that's why all roads led to should Marty be able to hire full-time staff that are city employees, not, bring in temporary help. I'm not talking about it's just.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to answer all the questions I can.
Just for the benefit of the group, this is from the materials that I printed, which is available to all of us. In 1994, it was ordinance 94-286, there, section 2.04 was added to the charter. And it was titled legal aid, and it started by saying city council may appoint one assistant city attorney whose salary and qualifications shall be in accordance with those established for other assistant city attorneys. And then it goes on to talk about those responsibilities. So in 94, it was memorialized that someone from the city attorney's office would sit with city council. In 2008, which was ordinance 2008-120, the legal aid was changed to city council attorney. That's just from the materials, for what it's worth.
Sir.
So just to, I guess, add some color to that. That language is from the 1975 charter. That should also be available in the documents that are provided for Rob. The first city council attorney, and that was the language that they shall be a city council attorney or assistant attorney. That's been in there since it was amended as read. The first city council attorney never was an assistant city council attorney. It was the former city attorney for Miami, John Cicero, who never worked for the city, and I don't think, council hired him, the chair negotiated his salary, he was selected by a committee of the city council, so really, the administration had nothing to do with hiring the first city council attorney at that time. After he left, there was a firm that were two, members of private practice, lawyers in private practice, that essentially were pro bono for the city council for like 2 years. They weren't associated with the city at all. And then the third was David Carr, who came on, who did serve as a city attorney, but he left to start his own private practice. And while he was in private practice, he also served as city council attorney simultaneously. So that was also something I was a little confused by, and based on my discussion with David Carr and his knowledge of his deliberations at that time. And this kind of gets into the weeds, so I'm trying to cut myself off here. But there was some language inserted into the 1975 charter because it had to pass through delegation. It wasn't voted on as it is now. And Julian Lane, who was former mayor of Tampa, kind of got his hands into that bill to insert some language like legal aid, must be a assistant city attorney, et cetera. Because there was conflict in the delegation about how the language should be worded. But the way it played out, it wasn't really ever a assistant city attorney, I think until the 90s, which was when Greco came in and had somebody from the city attorney's office come and say.
But they were hired through the city.
Technically, this is the city's money.
Right.
But they were pulled from the stable of the city attorney's office.
Okay.
I would, just like Gary said, I would recommend that we have a chair come and say their perspective, because right now we're talking about something that kind of manages their relationship. And we could ask the mayor to come and say what her perspective of it is as well, like, if we just need to figure out what the problem is with y'all working together. We're doing hypotheticals and, I love them, however, if I had specifics and I can say, okay, well, I can make this decision based off of these many examples that this person has given us, whether they are on the council right now or they were in the council in the past. I don't know if we can ask them to come, they can give their experience, you probably won't be here, say what your perspective of the thing is, but.
You can have them do whatever you want.
phone.
And Madam Chair, it was a good suggestion, but first, my questions, I think have been answered and satisfied. I think it would be a mistake for us to ask city council chair to come and appear before us, because my impression is I think that would be considered disrespectful to the chair. It would be like council commanding the mayor to come and speak before this sort of thing.
You said we have, I
Can we hold off on the discussion until the
Yes,
city attorney's finished?
perfect, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I didn't have a question, but I think.
But I welcome as much input as you get on this, because I don't want to be the, I want to make sure that people's perspectives are brought, trying to be as open as I can before we finish up.
Right, not yet, no. I just,
I don't know.
I wanna make sure, because you've given us a lot of your time,
Fine.
we can maybe a final round around any questions. I think the conversation is extremely helpful. But it feels like we've had a lot of good conversation. Does anyone else have anything more for Scott today?
I don't know, you were, I guess, trying to not get specific, reference specific cases, but, are you familiar with the lawsuit that was brought against, John Dingfelter? Related to public records?
By the way, from the paper,
Yeah.
so I mean, I'm as knowledgeable as if you being around the city,
Okay,
but not,
yeah, I mean, I raised that because it was a situation where it was certainly reported, I mean, a lot of this credit in the paper, but it was certainly reported in a manner that made it appear as though the city attorney was electing to not represent council.
Well,
So,
right,
I don't
because
know that that was the case, but.
well, that is probably the situation where we represent the council. And the council members, when they're acting as a council, but we actually don't represent individual council members. So so that's also where, by the way, I'm still working on that too. So I better back out of that, because I'm not doing it because I don't want to answer the question. It's just that I haven't quite worked through some of these issues being, in the circle.
Yeah, and I don't mind sticking my neck out and doing the case, because we're all like looking for examples, and nobody wants to say any, so I just started throwing it out there. I'm sure there was a reason why it played out the way it did, but there are examples that exist, and so.
Well, I mean, if you want me to, I can get the
I'm
answer.
not,
But Stephen, in that case, Marty Sullivan wasn't represented in Felder either.
and I'm not suggesting that he is, I just think for the benefit of everybody,
But
it's
you're
important to
right,
talk about
you did.
examples, because I think there are reasons why things occur and things that.
Yep, absolutely.
So that change specifically, Stephen, could be advise the mayor, comma, the city council, comma, and it continues in committees that are up, but it could say the city council and its members individually, right? I mean, that's the kind of what you're saying.
That's
I mean, you're not
also-
suggesting that way, but that would be the discussion we would have.
I think that might be up to our
Or
council,
I don't think you speak to that, that's even possible, like, well, I don't think it would work if you do that, like, if two members of a body are opposed, you would be conflicted out of it. Your client is the whole group, so the majority of the group, right?
Yes, that actually may create more issues. I understand your response, but that would actually, I think the issues you're grappling with now and how I represent, that would actually be a very scary scenario.
Okay, no.
No. Pardon me?
Under the charter, it gives advice individually to the members.
To each, but the council is a general,
Well, behind you, I think is the language, right?
council. Becky may disagree, council, but we represent the council as a whole. But we don't represent individual ones to like you, or we agree with you, or we disagree with you. There's again a line there, Rebecca, I think, but,
I agree.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I tried.
You did great.
It's been an hour and a half, but it's, thank you. Good effort.
Thanks. If you want me back, I'll be happy to come back.
Dive in. Have a discussion about this idea of having someone, the chair, entertain that, or retract it, I don't know where that's it, but.
I didn't hear what you said, so here.
My apologies, I talked about inviting the chair to attend.
Oh.
And I think
You
it's.
guys differing opinion, we can get to the point of a motion, but I just
Yeah.
asked, while we're talking about it, to
Yeah, I see. Sure. So one, I'm a little bit afraid that us as a group asking the chair to come and speak to us as a group could be perceived as disrespectful. I also, what was communicated to us at the last meeting was that whatever we decide has to go to city council, has got to pass city council by 2/3 vote. And I think what was communicated to us at our last meeting after we decided to invite Scott and Marty to come and talk to us, was not to pass anything. It's not gonna pass city council. And so my inquiry personally has been satisfied. I thought that was very informative. It may be futile for us to go further if the message, and I don't know if Ken or you or how to communicate.
The council,
said we're not.
right, they would not entertain changes to the city council or.
So what we've been told is not, even if we were to think of something, it's not gonna pass and get on the minute anyway, so asking the chair to come and talk about it is likely not gonna be well received, and I feel like that was very helpful to me and satisfied me. I certainly will defer to the group here, but those are my thoughts here. It was a great suggestion, but those are kind of additional thoughts to it.
So, did you want to say something?
No, I want to hear
Well, I don't wanna lose sight of the actual question, which was, should the city council attorney have additional staff? And I don't think anybody has found, no facts have been put forward to suggest one way or the other. So if the chairman of the city council has information that they could offer either directly or through a proxy, that would certainly help me individually, because I think that we are gonna have to respond to that question as a group.
Well, he seemed to say that.
Yeah.
I can
That's a very narrow question, Stephen, that was not answered. That's different. You don't need to hear from the chairman to answer that question. They can answer that question in writing, explain to us why it is you think you need the ability to hire independent staff yourself. I mean, to me, I don't understand that. You could simply pick up the phone and call the city attorney's office and say, I'm looking at this. But that's different. But, there were lots of other questions. One of the issues, and I never heard, by the way, someone mentioned early on that there was a suggestion that the city council's attorney's position be eliminated. I don't recall that ever being raised. I call that was a passing comment, but you didn't raise it as a motion. No one entertained it. I didn't, no one did. And so, but I think if Stephen's right, if it was a very focused, narrow question, you can ask them and see if they can put some color on why you need to hire, what you would need to do.
You must have a work plan, I mean, there must be
Well,
something.
something out there.
With due respect to us, we asked to have the city council attorney come and speak to us and probably could have answered that question. And the answer we got was that he was told not to be here today. So we did offer the opportunity to have somebody come and speak to us to answer those kinds of questions. And again, what we were told was no.
Which doesn't necessarily mean we can give an answer a different way. If we were to ask on a limited basis.
Yeah, but after we asked once and we ask again, we again run the risk of poking people in the eye. So the way I'm understanding it is we were told, don't ask questions about this, and we're not coming to talk to you about it. So I, for one, am no hook on asking for more information on the city attorney, the city council attorney position.
You're right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think we need any more information. It was a really great discussion today. But then we kind of covered this in Article 2 when we covered the staff positions. city council can create, if they find it in the budget, they can create any staff position that they want and then hire whoever that person is that they need. It's just a matter of getting it into the budget, so strictly speaking to that staffing issue, I don't see anything, you know, I mean, the charter says it right there, they can just do it if they want to,
Just has to go through the process.
just have to be.
Any more discussion on these items?
I just think I was digging deeper rather than this one issue. I think a lot of the contention points between our two branches of government stem from this issue, and I thought it would be critical to hear from the chair's perspective, not only with this, but for a multitude of these issues. So that's why I brought it up, and I think that the chair would be willing to come down, maybe not, you know, the next meeting, but is there any sort of will here to entertain a motion to ask?
I can move.
Sorry.
You pass it.
Is there any more discussion on that? I don't think there's a consensus necessarily, but
Do you want to make a motion to request that this process?
I could try. Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to ask the chair of Tampa City Council at his leisure in coordination with us to come down and spend an hour with us and answer some particular questions.
Any second?
One second.
It's been moved and properly second, discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote no, but I wanna explain for the record why. Not because I wasn't welcome, the chair to come and speak to us, it's a great civic leader and I would welcome that, but I'm concerned that the ask we have might be misconstrued and being construed as antagonistic, so that's why I vote.
Go ahead.
Please, I don't know if the maker of the motion would consider an amendment to rephrase that as to letting the chairperson know that we had some remaining questions about some of the things that they wanted to ask for, and we would welcome their input if they so choose to give it.
Absolutely, yeah.
A little less asking and a little more, we're open to hearing from you, because I'd be open to hearing from them.
Either in person or.
Sure.
From a procedural perspective, so you're withdrawing your motion, you made that as a motion?
Or he could accept my friendly amendment.
So I'll accept, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll accept both amendments. I like the idea of, what was yours, Rebecca, remind me?
To let the council know that we still have some remaining questions about some of the issues that they presented to us, and that we would be happy to receive additional information from them if they so choose to.
In person or in writing? Okay.
Kenny, you got that?
And just make sure we've now broadened it to the entire council, not just the chair.
The chair specifically, I mean.
The chair.
Yeah. Okay. Do I need to repeat the whole thing or?
No, in light of the amendment, I would support that. Thank you for the discussion.
We'll work together.
All right, thank you. All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. All right, motion carries.
Well done, Gary.
All right.
Would it be appropriate time to take that 3-minute bathroom break?
That's the group. Last time we soldiered through. Or do you want a 5-minute break? I'm happy to do that before we restart. Okay, let's do it. Good suggestion. Thank you. Last meeting.
now we're finding one city attorney. We're actually, that's what we need. That's the goal is, that's what I'm telling you, we just not, this is what we've got left. And I think we're finding answers, yeah, already, I think we can knock it out. Ross Slade, I was trying to get.
Listen, hey, the quicker we can get.
We have some exciting Department of Revenue and. Yeah, you're killing me, you're killing me. Come on, man, that's what I'm signed up for. I know.
You know, it was easy to get lost in house.
Thanks.
This is it.
Thanks, Joe. I thought I was at this group. I know, we make it living.
No, I hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good suggestion on a break. And now we're back. Last time we got through the department section of 5, now we're on, guess what? The city attorney, so that's good timing, since we just spent an hour and a half with the city attorney. So what I'd like to do, as is our typical approach, we get to the questions. But first I kind of just drain the key bullets here and get conversation going if anyone has any changes that they're requesting. So I always ask, we agree, most times we say yes, but if there are any changes we're requesting, or if in fact we discover we need more information, we can take that as an action item and return to it. So the same process, and then we'll circle back to this section. Hopefully the last hour and a half with Scott has given us a better understanding to allow for us to more rapidly go through this, but I'm not suggesting a rush. That being the case, can everyone, and I'm sorry if I'm standing in front, we've got room, but everyone can see, just tell me to move from your way. So, we'll start at the top. We have the city attorney as the final official legal representative of the city. Yes.
Did we already do 501 without the head?
I believe that's departments, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
We did, okay.
So last time we went through, we answered, believe it or not, we didn't have any changes to any of this, and we answered these questions together. And I moved 1 to 6 because there's some overlap with this one, and it was a better location. So I moved it. Just to recap real quick. Well, you guys can see this, I won't read this, but yes. I try to update these pretty rapidly after we meet, so you guys can immediately go in and be like, yeah, that's not quite what I remember. I typically send it out no later than the weekend after the meeting. Yeah, it's like Sunday morning joy, I do that with you guys. But seriously, I do that intentionally because the details here really matter, and they get to what we actually want to change. So short answer is yes, long answer. That was departments, we're at the city attorney point. Official legal representative, the city's the client, we talked about that, any changes to that? As before, I'll move kind of quickly in this and release this cost. Okay, this is a little bit longer, but it's worth going through. They will take the management charge and control of all legal business of the city in regard to municipal affairs, a legal advisor over there, the city council and committees thereof and all of the several departments, offices, and boards of the city government. And when required, the city attorney shall furnish written or verbal opinions to them upon any subject in which the city is interested. Are we good with that language? Yes, okay. Shall collect, I believe I've taken all the text before, sometimes I've truncated it, but I think these are pretty comprehensive. Shall collect delinquent taxes and assessments upon realty, but the city attorney shall commence no suit on account thereof. Without first giving these 10 days written notice by registered mail of their intention to do so, that's pretty down in the weeds. Are we good with that? Okay. Bobby.
Is there anything in state statute with that, or is that a city specific regulation, the 10-day notice?
I would have to research that. The odds are, because this came out of a special act originally, it was something that the legislature wanted to incorporate. But there may be a companion state law.
Do you need follow-up, or is that sufficient? Okay. Shall draft bonds, deeds, obligations, contract, leases, covenants, agreements, and other instruments of whatever nature which may be required by ordinance, order of the mayor or city council, or which by law is such an agreement the city is to be at the expense of drawn. Are we good with that language? Yes. So far, Billy, you called it, we're going pretty quickly. Shall commence and prosecute all actions and suits brought by the city before a tribunal of the state, and also to appear, advocate, and defend the rights and interests of the city or any officer of the city. In any suit or prosecution for any act in the discharge of official duties wherein any state prohibited ordinance or act of the city government is brought in question. Are you okay with that? Yes. Let's go to the questions now, if we may. So that we can have this year's, see your group's decision on yes, no, somewhere in between. I realize when we get these questions, there's something behind them that we're not privy to. So we just use our best judgment, right? If we really, that goes to your request of earlier to try to learn a little bit more context. Well, let's go with what we have and see if we can get through them. So the first question is there a way to better define the role and powers of the city attorney's office? That's the question. This is pretty seems to be pretty comprehensively defined. We've got more information from Scott. Is our feeling that we are adequately covered in the charter for the city attorney's role? Does anyone think that we are not? Okay. So question one is no / not required. Okay, question two. Should we clarify in the charter that the city attorney is not the judicial branch of the city, and that the city attorney simply advises his or her clients? It's a little easier to unpack this after having Scott here, I think, so again, timing is good. Bill?
You don't need to, because it's clear in the charter that you only have two branches of government, the legislative and the executive branch, period, and the historic. The municipalities cannot have a judicial branch. It goes to the court systems, the circuit.
And that's a great prompt for this question. But it's sort of a solution without a problem to us. I'm not saying that pejoratively, just in terms of the content of the document. What I'm hearing is that doing this is not required. Do you have concurrence on that? We do not need to specify something when there are two branches well defined. So question two is the same answer as question one. Question three, since the charter currently defines the mayor and city council as two clients of the city attorney, should the city council have more powers over this? Should the city council attorney, I think that's what, let me read that statement. Should the city council have more powers over the city attorney once the city council has approved the appointment?
No.
I didn't hear any issues related to the city attorney being reined in any way. I didn't hear that as an issue or anything, but I know from Rebecca Bobby, but
I'm gonna take yes on this one. My position is that since the city attorney is equally, I guess it equally represents all the constituents of the government, that there is a relationship there such that if one constituent being equally represented as the other decides that they're not being represented sufficiently, they should have some sort of say in their representation.
so your answer to this is yes, Bill.
I think you have to unpack it respectfully, Bobby, and that is, what do you mean by more powers of the city attorney? What I mean by that is, when you look at the charter as a whole, the city attorney, right, is hired by the city. It has to be approved by city council. Right? And the executive branch is the branch, right, that for the most part is going to interface with the city attorney, right? So what do? You have a attorney and you consult with the attorney on a myriad of issues. What are those issues? So then you have to ask, and I would ask, what do you mean by more powers over the city attorney? Do you mean hiring and firing powers? Do you mean, I don't know what that means, because lawyers are not generally subject to someone's powers. You're my client, right? And you're gonna ask me a legal question. I'm gonna give you my best advice on the legal question. So I think you're right in your first part. In other words, they're your constituents. The city's your client, and made up of the city is what the legislative and the executive branch, absolutely. Right? And you have obligations to advise both to the best of your ability and all of that. I don't understand what someone means by more powers. Yeah. So, I mean, that's why, that's why I'm drilling down. And as that question's posed, I would say no, because I don't even have an understanding of what that person meant by more powers.
Yeah.
Okay, Bobby, just as
Just a quick answer, totally valid. I agree with everything you said. I would narrow it down to ability to terminate. I mean, they're involved in the hiring process. I think the power that I had in mind, that I guess they did and make as good as it should. Was the power to remove them.
So I guess I'm going off of your memory, but when I was on staff, it was an annual appointment because there were certain executive level positions that required residency waivers. And so it came up every year. And I guess my question is, it seems like that is no longer the case, and so an appointment then lasts until the person vacates the position or the mayor relieves them of their duties. So I guess I would appreciate some clarification on that, because that's just an assumption on my part. Is that how it currently works, where the appointment, once it's made, that person can remain in that role for potentially 8 years, or is it with the term of the mayor, they have to reappoint them, or like, how does it work now? Does anybody know?
If I can answer that, I mean, as it works right now, it's a single confirmation, and they last as long as the mayor does, unless the mayor approves them. The reason why that came up every year was exactly what you said, because they had to go back for residency waivers. The moment they don't need that waiver, they live in the city, there's not a process factor.
Can conceivably they could stay on beyond the mayoral change.
I believe there's specific language.
Right, it's already a cap-
Right, that terminates them with the mayor, but they could be reappointed by the next mayor.
So currently the mayor can, would ask the city attorney to leave. They're the higher authority and the firing authority. You're suggesting, Bobby, that it be the council with the same powers, or that both groups have to agree? Can you flesh that out a little bit? Interesting. Or because you have one on one side, now you're gonna shift it all the way over, you could make the same argument in both directions, so I just asked that for a point of clarification.
But what I had in mind was that they would have equal power. So if we would, I guess, walk through procedurally, the mayor would appoint a city attorney at the start of their term. That's what happens now.
No.
That's how it happens now.
City council has to approve.
Well, that's
The way
the second step.
they changed it, actually,
Nominate, sorry.
nominate and city council appoint.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
So proceed mechanistically,
So
the mayor
nominate-
has a person,
The city council appoints.
the city council agrees or disagrees to
Yeah.
have that person join the staff. And then that person's in until that mayor who wanted them says it's time to go, or the mayor is voted out of office.
Right.
So my position would be that we don't change anything on that front. The mayor chooses their person.
Mhm.
The city council agrees with that choice. I think we'll get to that language later, I guess.
Yep.
And then the selected staff member remains the city council attorney. The only change that I'm advocating for is after that process is complete, the city council would have the authority to then terminate the mayor, terminate the city attorney. Out the mayor.
So in that scenario, and then I want to hear from the group, in that scenario, the mayor may believe his or her city attorney is amazing. And they have good reason for that. City council doesn't, maybe has good reason for their concerns. So you're basically saying the city council has overrides the mayor's authority in that case and can summarily dismiss someone.
I don't think summarily would be the right word. There would have to be some language to safeguard politically motivated terminations, like
It was,
if there's clear.
it's a bit of a leading question to try to get that out of you.
Sure,
Does the
no.
city council have, does the mayor have some ability to fire the city council's council?
No.
Go, please.
Bobby, I hear you, but I think that would create a potential nightmare. I just would see a city attorney be potentially ping pong, just going back and forth. And I can tell you, you know, it's a job you need to recruit good people for. And I think your pool of talent is going to shrink immensely if I thought that's how that was gonna work out. I just, you know, geez, I'm hoping 4 out of 7 or 5 out of 7 are decide they don't like my latest, you know, my analysis on this, I'm out of a job. I think that this is fraught with peril.
Does anyone in and I don't say this to single you out, but the reality is that eventually we'll have to make decisions on this. Does anyone else share or Supervisor Bobby's view about the issue and or the solution? To get a sense for whether or not this would go forward to the next step. See,
I mean, I just bring it up because until I think the 2023 change, that I will go back and look, but I'm almost positive that every department that came and was sworn there. And I can't say that happened before I joined, but I have that recollection, so.
every department had included the city attorney as a body, that's not the part, it's kind of different. So,
Whether or not they needed a residency waiver, or not, they all attended and all.
so they'll have the opportunity for the council to opine as to whether or not they should remain in the position.
And this occurred before the charter was last changed to remove the residency requirement, they stopped coming.
But they could have done that for any reason, they could have said,
No, but it was an annual waiver to residency requirements, and so that's why staff.
okay, there's about that, not about that person staying in the job or not necessarily.
The only action they could take is if they
No.
were residents or non-residents.
No, the action was to grant that individual a waiver to the residency requirement. But there were individuals there that did not require one. I don't know if you remember, I didn't watch, but,
Let me just say, I think at the last charter commission, there was a question about the department heads needing residency. And what was happening in practice, my recollection is that they were appointing people at an interim position. I don't, if it was in the charter, which you have to be a resident, I don't think anybody could have waived that unless there was a mechanism in the charter, which I don't think there was. I suspect what was happening, if unless there was something in the charter, I suspect what was happening is interims probably have to get appointed on an annual basis. You probably can't appoint an interim for more than a year, and they probably were coming back to get reappointed in interim capacity. And the charter amendment removed the requirement that the department heads have to live in the city limits. And so that, I don't know what happened after that would have changed it. I think Stephen, you might correct me if I'm wrong.
the language was specific to three. You could come back 3 times and ask for a waiver, but after the third one, you could not.
That wasn't. So I want to make sure we're tracking here, I see you Kathleen just a second, so.
I just have a question for Stephen, because they came back every year. Was the topic only the residency question? Because I think he's saying competency.
Exactly.
So there's two, I'm confused with the residency example, only because if it went away, could they use other reasons to not give them the residency waiver? You know what I'm saying?
There's no reason to not have to be, like, it's just a yes or no vote. And that's why I'm raising it, is because
So they could vote no, and if they wanted to have been resident, so there could be other factors of it.
no, it was only, they were only asking for those individuals that needed a waiver to the residency requirement.
But there would be a rule around waivers, right, so it would be yes or no to all of them, or it wasn't implemented based on flavor of the, you know what I mean, was it uniformly applied?
To everyone that required a waiver at a given time, yes.
But the rulings were consistent, someone needed a waiver, either yes or no, so like yes for you, no for you, yes for you, no for you. Because that could talk to confidence, right, that's where we're getting. I just want to understand this real quickly.
My understanding is you could pull a name out and say no.
So could be other reasons, but no one would ever know because you never had that conversation.
There wasn't a requirement to document, say why, just, the waiver had to be approved by council, it didn't get condition.
So was in asking that question, when you say, Stephen, that you agree the council should have the ability to fire the city attorney?
No, I raised it because it was relevant to the prior city attorney, and it came up every year, that's why I'm raising it.
Okay.
And it no longer exists, so I think that's where the question is potentially coming from.
My earlier question is, does anyone agree with the direction toward the council being able to fire the city attorney? Does anyone agree with, like I said, either the issue or the solution Bob is presenting? Yes, no,
I don't know
maybe.
what the solution is, but I did find it, so Kathleen's point about, or the mayor not being able to fire the council attorney. But city attorney has final say. And if their boss is the mayor, well, if they're the only person that can fire them is the mayor, then that would be the person that I would listening to, but I don't know, I'm not a lawyer.
Rebecca.
So I thought about this one a lot because if I could find a way to have city council feel more comfortable with the city attorney actually representing them in their best interest when they're sitting in their role acting as the city, because they act as the city a lot. And the city attorney does represent them along with, anyway. That's really important to me. So I thought about this one a lot. But I don't think that this is actually a solution, and I actually think, I was there 14 years, I served under 6 city attorneys. If you lose confidence of city council, you can't function. The problem takes care of itself. You can't go down to city council on a regular basis and having your assistant city attorney go down there and have city council go, I don't believe you. You have to leave. So it's a practical matter, you don't need to be fired. If you can't figure out how to gain their confidence, you can't function. And it kind of takes care of itself. And I really agree with what Bill said as far as attracting high quality people. If you look at some of the smaller beach communities, no names need to be mentioned, the way they roll through people, like, you know, every 2 years they get, you know, a different majority, you know, growth, pro-growth, anti-growth, back and forth, and the city manager gets fired. That's, you're not attracting the cream of the crop when you know that it's gonna be extremely short-lived.
What I'm hearing is this group, accepting body, believes that the city council should not have firing authority over this. Powers is generic and broad and you know, unspecific, so we don't know what that means, but we got to the point, at least with one CRC member saying they do know what that means for them. But I'm hearing not to move forward with this based on the group's feedback. Can we proceed on that basis? Again, not diminishing, it doesn't matter which is, I'm not diminishing it. Okay, so I'm just gonna summarize, if there's no.
That was a question raised by the council, these are questions raised by the council. They asked.
What's that? I'm sorry.
That was a question raised by the council, I'm just confirming that.
Yeah, that was this one here, which is the third question that I go on into this subject area. I'm gonna move on to the next one to keep this moving. Since the charter defines several clients for the city attorney, I think we understood this better that they have one client, which is the city. Should the city attorney be prohibited from investigating one client at the order of another and follow Florida bar rules?
I agree that they should follow Florida bar rules, but I don't think that we have the authority to put in the charter that you follow Florida bar rules, because I think that's preempted to the Florida bar.
It would be helpful to know the context of the question.
I know what I think it is, but I feel like I'm talking for other people too much. And
Not at all. We won't capture with that, we'll understand that caveat, Rebecca, but I don't have a clue what you're talking about. So what do you think it is?
Well, then I'm also put in a position of phrasing this in a way that like half the people are gonna be upset with how I'm phrasing it, that there was a council person and there was someone who was working for the council person who made accusations about the council person.
Okay. Now I'm getting a picture here.
I think that was as neutral as.
Was an HR issue that the city attorney's office investigated.
If I can add what I thought it was, which is probably that, and maybe it's both, maybe it's neither, but I thought this was referring to when there was some issues with public records keeping by one of this city council members, and the city attorney at that time, I might be botching this, but chose not to defend I might be using the wrong word, but essentially work with that city council member and was,
That was the earlier example, was
yeah, and they were caught, that city attorney was caught texting back and forth with the lawyer who was suing that council member and exchanging information and then was unable to produce the records of that conversation herself.
This one strikes me as one that we maybe should flush out a little more, because they always, right, the obvious is everybody, they have to, everyone has to follow the bar rules, so if, it does strike me, I wanna think this one through, if you had the mayor's, the city attorney investigating under Rebecca's scenario, in the alleged improprieties, whatever they were. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, the first thing I would do is call an outside counsel for, an internal HR investigation involving the mayor, the city council. That's, I know what I would do.
I'm not saying that they conducted the investigation or not, I'm saying that there was a perception that there was.
Oh, okay, well, okay.
And I think that's what my understanding of the concern was.
Okay. I don't know whether they did investigation or not, but it seems to me like in that scenario, what they should be doing is calling an independent counsel to come in and do,
I mean,
I wish I'd asked Scott Steady that
he wasn't there.
No, but I mean, the question about his thoughts on this, that
Yeah,
just.
I don't think there's a conflict of interest or bar issue though, if it was the mayor who had been accused of something or a city council member, and it's an HR issue. There's a, depending on the size of the company, they may have their internal HR people or their internal counsel, who's hire somebody from outside to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think that's a conflict.
They always were, but generally speaking, in the
Yeah.
HR situation, they're gonna bring an independent counsel and say, give me a clean, you tell me what what you think
There
I
might
should
be
do.
reasons to do that, right? Because then the
Yeah.
investigation report doesn't have any bias implicit.
Right.
Are we saying that did not happen in the case that we were referring to?
I'm not, I was not there,
What did happen?
and so I know what I read in the paper, which is not always accurate, so I am.
It's an interesting situation. One of the things that I'm not sort of outside of looking into this, you guys have no experience, but it goes back to the question I posed when we started, which is, what's the problem we're trying to solve for? And I think we could do everything in our power, trying to get this bulletproof and buttoned up so perfectly in a charter, I think is overestimating the effect of the charter. There are gonna be other issues and other wrinkles and other instances that don't quite fit within this. That wouldn't even be described anyway, because they're more a matter of operational concern or a procedural matter as opposed to a charter issue. So I bring it back to that so that we remind ourselves, if there's one story in a decade, yes, it maybe was painful, it wasn't great, but are we, right? It's sort of like if you never want to get hurt, you wrap yourself in toilet paper and never leave your bedroom. But in other words, I just go back to the concept of, is it an issue that's rises to the level of requiring charter amendments to A, and B, do charter amendments really prevent that or something like that happening? I just pose that to the group. Because I'm sure these resonate, but are they endemic to the system that they're really requiring novel solutions to the charter?
I'm not a lawyer, so I have a question for the lawyers, like, if you have multiple clients, is there a hierarchy based on, like, elected, appointed, that you would service, service everybody the same? Or how do you determine hierarchical response after that?
I think it's a great question. I don't think you need like who you prioritize. I think you need who you take direction from. Is that your question?
Well, no, it says you have several clients as a city attorney, which, he listed out all those in his chart. They have a lot of agencies and responsibilities and city council, regulations, whatever. So if you had somebody come in and say something, I'm just saying there must have been a conflict, there must have been multiple clients.
If I can help,
And how do you prioritize?
Hold on,
who you
can I go in?
sure, if I can help, I think that's why Scott shared his flow chart, because you can see
Yeah.
that different responsibilities are assigned to different lawyers in order to provide
And he
everyone
delegates that.
with that service, right? That's why he has multiple assistants.
Thank you, I'm gonna look to Garrett and then to Bill.
I think, and you might say the same thing, but I think the premise of the question might be incorrect. I think Scott explained, there's not several clients, the client is the city. The city includes the administration, the city council, et cetera, right? You know, is that where you're going?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Which might clarify the two questions we've been debating. The top one says two clients, right, city attorney and city council.
And you don't need to add in, the yes, follow the law rules, yes, you have to, that's not a charter. You're not suggesting
Right, and I
that.
said, but not in charter.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, you were standing for it.
Yeah, you can probably read it anyway, right? I might be the only one. So I think what we're saying here is no, right? Do you have any objections to that?
Scott did answer that and say, hey, I'd probably step out of it.
And that's the part,
Yeah.
you're not gonna, probably not try to say, when this happens, do
Right.
this, when this happens, do that. Right, you're going to let them use their judgment to run their operation, appropriate to what the goal is, and what's in the best interest of their clients. So, okay,
And not that I think it would ever happen, but remember, if the city attorney did violate the bar rules anyway, you could report that person to Florida bar, right? And the Florida bar has a whole team of lawyers that can come in and do a full bar investigation. Yeah, so.
I just realized I missed these two, my apologies, they wrapped around, I think these will be pretty easy. The next two bullets, sorry, out of order, shall be furnished, city attorney shall be furnished with such assistant attorneys and clerical help as the city council may authorize. Their salaries to be fixed by said city council, any objections to that? And the city attorney's office shall be in the city hall, and the city attorney shall take no other employment or work that interferes with speedy efficient transactions and with city business, any objections to that? Okay. You thought that was exciting, that we're talking about Department of Revenue and Finance next. Okay, so Department of Revenue and Finance, we're gonna go through these, I don't have any council questions about this, so this is more of a straightforward review. Bullet one, shall have cognizance of all financial matters of the city, collection, receipt, deposit of monies, and other revenues from whatever source, derived, received, or to be received, or by or due and owed to the city, any changes to that? So now, this department shall be headed by the director of finance. Any changes to that? That shall be the duty of the director of finance to issue warrants for payments of money by the city to keep accurate accounts of taxes, revenue assessments, all receipts, disbursements, assets, liabilities, and all appropriations. Funding account balances and expenditures thereof is provided, any changes to that? Oh boy, I'm gonna try to really go through this. The director of finance shall keep available at all times for inspection by the mayor, city council, and head departments inventories of all property, which shall be revised monthly. Issue monthly statements to each of such offices showing expenditures and balances in and for all budgeted funds and accounts, manage and control the operations of the department to ensure all monies received or to be received by or due and payable to the city are properly collected and accounted for, devise and maintain appropriate books to account for accounting systems accurately, showing on a daily basis all receipts and disbursements of the department. Any objections with that? Kind of standard stuff, right? And then the director of finance shall be the custodian of the bonds, notes, chooses in action and other like assets in the position of the city.
The only question I had was quarterly versus monthly. I mean, I don't know how much activity there is in terms of managing a property list for the city, but I would imagine it's probably fairly extensive.
That was, I remember saying,
Right under the property,
is it
The
different?
director of finance shall warn that one.
keep available at all times and inspection by the mayor.
Oh, right here, monthly statements?
No, to be revised monthly.
I'm sorry.
Before the number two.
I'm sorry, yes, it's there in there, I got you, yep. Inventories of all, so this is the property inventory when you're specifically talking about. Yeah, I don't, rightly reporting, the question always is,
I don't,
Not the screens, there's work to do to create that. So
I don't know if that includes real property, but in real estate, it's usually gone through on a monthly basis, so it probably includes other property as well.
I know there are inventories at the county.
Yeah, I think they're rental.
To be honest, for things like IT equipment, but that's a very small piece of.
I know in companies, it's kind of.
I guess, let me ask the question, has anyone heard any issues?
I was just gonna say.
Any issues with
We've
this?
heard from the mayor, city council.
Okay to move on. I thought, by the way, I thought that too, is when you're doing work, I mean, there's a lot of work sometimes to report stuff, as opposed to doing stuff. Okay. So 501B, the takeaway there is, that's good. No changes, sorry. Let's jump into internal audit. Show cognizance of all internal auditing for the city. The internal auditor will head a department and shall be the duty of that role to audit for each fiscal year all books, records, and accounts of the city and all accounts in which the city is interested. Shall perform other such audits as may be required by the mayor. In addition, the city council shall have the right to request the internal auditor to perform the additional internal audits for the supermajority vote of the city council is provided. So it sounds like the mayor can ask the internal auditor to audit, as can the city council with the majority vote. Does anyone have any changes to 501C? Bobby, go ahead.
Not necessarily a change, but a point of discussion, maybe clarification. I had this discussion with a former city council member today. He described there was an instance where there was somebody who worked in the housing department or contracting or some such department, and they were doing work for some other staff member of the administration, such that city taxpayer dollars were being used for that work, so taxpayers paid for this guy's pool or whatever it was, I don't recall exactly, which was shown in an audit, but according to the council member I spoke to, the council wasn't aware of that until like 8 months later after that employee had left. Because according to this council member, the mayor has to sign the audit before it's released. I didn't have time to fact check that because I just had this discussion in the car basically on the way here. So I don't know if that's an ordinance or the audit must be made available by X number of days or with this or that signature, so I don't know if you're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, the charter doesn't get into that level of detail, it would be in the procedure policies and all, in terms of how they process it. Something we can certainly look at it like.
I'm not sure about that instance, but in my lawyering experience, lawyering audit committees, typically what happens is the auditors issue a report and then there's a management response. And typically it's not circulated until after the management response because sometimes there'll be something that says, you lack a policy in this particular area, and the management response would be, we forgot to provide a policy, but here it is. So without triggering a bunch of stuff, usually audits go to management first and get a management response and then they just. I have no idea whether that's the instance we're talking about, but it strikes me as there could be that process there.
I think what we're
Shouldn't take 7 months.
people who heard was that. So that could be a delay because that's built into the process, but then what you're saying suggests that even after that point, it was an extended period of time before the audit report was shared. Is that right, what you said?
This was reported to me that because the mayor's signature wasn't on it for an extended period of time, there wasn't any oversight or any public awareness or awareness from the council about that issue that had occurred. So I don't know if that's an ordinance, something that's put into ordinance that it must be signed by a number of days. I just wanted clarification on that, because there's other, I don't want to call them arbitrary or, there's other deadlines in the charter, you must have, there's 10 days is one I asked about earlier with the legal department, must have something within 10 days, who said that was the state statute, so I don't know if there's something that touches on this particular issue of signing audits.
Well, some of these have time-bound provisions in them and some don't. And this one doesn't.
Yeah, this one by charter doesn't. If you want us to dig into the city's policies and procedures, if the majority want to do that.
I'm not sure we want to start setting policy, I mean, if there's a procedure in terms of how they report, that's what you're asking for, but I'm not sure you wanna start adding all those steps into a charter.
I think that'd be putting the cart in front of the horse, but at least understanding what the process is, because if there's wiggle room for something like that to happen, I mean, that obviously is a problem, so I guess my question is, how's that addressed right now?
We can certainly ask for a summary of the policy around the time, I think that's really what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is there any requirement or obligation for the internal audit reports to be signed and shared within a reasonable time? We could ask that question, just.
It's the
The
majority
freedom of
who wants to do it.
information would, they would be, you could get this, an internal audit with federal FOIA, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
So
so
the question would be,
when is it available?
Yeah, it's not
with
signed.
the public, I mean, people, governments play games with public records requests all the time, so, so the question is whether there is a date specific in terms of how much time has to go by before you require.
We're talking about like an annual audit or talking about just like.
Any audit.
Special.
I mean, a special audit probably would have an ad hoc audit of an issue probably would have a time limitation just because you don't know what the issue is, sorry.
No.
Okay, no,
Bobby asked me if he would like some information. It's not a big lift to get the information, it's simple, right, Bobby, with the policies and procedures for it. So, when Ken needs a majority list to vote to get that information, I will move Bobby to, to ask Ken to just get the information, we'll look at it and see if it takes us any. It's not a big lift.
Do we even need a motion for that?
I don't know.
Are people resistant to that?
I mean, if I can just funnel some other things through Scott, I could just.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of, are you asking us to relay to staff? We'd like some information, we can do that.
I personally would.
That,
Yeah, my motion was to, I thought I heard you say, Ken, we could get the policies and procedures.
yes, I think it's really a question. Both of us are put on limits as to how much time we can spend.
Okay.
So we need direction from you, and we don't typically act on one person's
Oh,
direction.
yeah, no, that's why I made the motion.
Right.
And it's a simple 1 or 2 sentence request. Yes, that's
All right, second.
Before we make the motion, I want to refine, for you to refine if you feel it's appropriate. There's one request would be to give me everything, policy and procedures about this issue. Another is to more specifically ask if the policy or procedure dictates a time frame by which completed audits are signed by the mayor and shared with city council. I want you guys to tell us.
Nailed it.
Okay, so I'll let you motion in second.
That was the motion.
I can't motion. I can move, but I can't motion.
Motion to do what Rob said. Thank you for putting that so eloquently, Rob.
So you guys need to take a motion, you wanna do the proper motioning on this, and I'll make sure to follow up, because I agree, I think you're gonna say, there's a second.
Second.
Okay, I'll let the chair do this bit. and I'll-
All right, has it been moved? Who
Yeah.
moved it?
I moved it.
All right, it's been moved and properly second, all, in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Right, motion carries.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Ken.
For the minutes, there was a motion, a second that Bill had made that I presume Bill you withdrew it. Yeah, it's just for the minutes, Bill withdrew it.
Scott has been, after about a couple of weeks ago, when he called and said, funnel this through me and I think he has staff that help us, which was really helpful to me, because I can get back to you with things, which you'll see in that action. So we need to learn about this. No objections to this as of yet, but this may shape a desire to add a little bit more detail. So, just write otherwise okay, pending. Okay, okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
It's just.
Right, police department. Cognizance, I'm gonna read all of them because it's short, cognizance format related to law enforcement. Chief of police shall be the head of the department under control and supervision of the mayor. Shall control of general charge of police forces. Shall be the duty of the chief of police to preserve the peace and enforce all ordinances of the city manager, police department, protect and preserve the property of the city, assigned to the department, and to prescribe from time to time by with the advice and consent of the mayor, rules and regulations for the orderly and efficient conduct of the department and its forces. So I guess rules and regulations is policy type things, et cetera. Any changes to 5.01D? Or needing more information? No, Commissioners, no. All good. No changes. Right. Fire department, is a little repetitive, but so cognizance of matters relating to fire protection and prevention. Fire chief shall head the department under control supervision of the mayor and control forces therein. Shall be the duty to preserve the safety of persons and property from fire related hazards, enforce fire protection and prevention ordinances and codes, protect and preserve the property of the city assigned to the department and prescribe from time to time, and with advice and consent of the mayor, rules and regs for the orderly and efficient conduct of the department. It's sort of a rinse and repeat from the prior ones for fire. Any changes to 5.01E? No. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna do a time check here and check in with you guys on this. We have the option to start getting into conduct of government, or we can spend just a little bit of time talking about the approach for our next meeting with you guys out early. Do you have a strong preference either way? It's 8:32, so we have about 25 minutes. Yeah, it's good. You guys be okay with that?
Is this the end when we get to 6?
6, no, it goes to, I think, 11.
Okay, so
We covered, that's the miscellaneous one. I think some of those latter ones will be fairly routine.
yeah, what you prepared, I printed.
Yeah, and
It goes to 6.
so let me ask the question a different way. You always say the better question is the better answer. Does anyone feel strongly that you want to remain in this room with each other and me for 25 more minutes?
No, I do not feel strong.
No one feels strong.
That's not long enough.
I feel our progress is sufficient, we can break. What I would like to do, kind of circling back to what Ron said, and I will write to this to you, so you receive the emails by not going to this mysterious other place. Which we can, he got, but he did a little technical trick that I will try to tell you guys about, but I'll try to prevent from happening again. What I would like to do next time, before we go into 6, is go back over where we were. For things like the very first article, I'd like to get motions to accept them so we can lock those down and realizing we can always, if we really need to, if we want to revisit, we can. I also need a decision in one particular part of one of the articles where I didn't quite get an answer. We've also gotten some more information that you guys can digest. So the point is, I kind of want to do some sweeping up with what we did before. And then get to this as a matter of course. Remember, next meeting, we have the planning commission coming, speaking of sweeping up, to talk about, generally speaking, what district composition or redistricting looks like, what the factors are. So you can ask those questions that you did with Scott. So that kind of fits into an old dialogue anyway. And we now know more about the attorneys. That were also questions that factored into earlier articles, right around the, I think it was mainly on the council attorney, because that was an earlier session. So let's focus on getting a good clean sweep through those next time. I still think we'll have time to make some headway here, but if that's okay with you, just provisionally as we move forward. And then we can really start closing the door on those articles and get a better sense for the rest of our time. Thank you for your time, energy, research. You'll see a lot of emails come through tonight or in the morning that you didn't get. Bobby's done a lot of research that you'll see on insurance research. Thank you, Bobby. If anyone else wants to do that, feel free. We have a reference material section in SharePoint. You could drop there, let me know, and I'll share it, whatever you do. So, any other questions?
Yeah, Rob, just for the record, can you take this meeting and hand it out and put it into the official public record so that we don't have to change our process?
Yes. We can have the electronic copy amended to the minutes, right? We can do that.
This is on the website.
So yes to that, we're just gonna amend these electronically to the actual electronic minutes. Alright, so I'm going to amend,
Yes, it's on the city website.
what's that?
I'm saying it's on the city website.
It's on the city website now, is it?
When you go on the executive, look up like the staff, something like that, right? They go, this PDF is now there.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
We can do this also as part of the.
Oh, we do, my apologies. My apologies. Is there any business?
Question, so at the next meeting, we're taking votes, we're not getting to the final amendment language, that's just the next step in the iterative process, say, we wanna move this forward, but we're not voting on language yet, so that's what you
Well,
described.
we have made a couple of language changes, and if a section, let's say, is otherwise fine, but you wanted to see a wording change, I would show that to you and have you vote on that particular section of the charter. Yes. If there are other housekeeping items around that, I really want to get those cleaned up before we get to that point. So in some cases, I'll be having to take a motion to say, yep, we all still agree, no changes to this, to section 1, let's say. Others, we have more work to do, and it might be, we made a couple of changes, does that look good, along with other no changes that we have? So it's just packaging each one, and I will have you take motions on that to get to comment.
And if I may, as a follow-up to that,
Yes.
will those just be simple majority for those changes that you described?
Yeah, technically, yes, it's a simple majority for any of these. Like I mentioned before, though, I think we'll have time to reflect on the entirety of it, I promise that to you. In case anyone wants to revisit, or they found out information, we can't be too constrained in that way. But at least we can say, up till now, let's say we get through 5, we have now decided either to change or not change all of these various sections of the charter. So, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, just, because there are a lot of questions that were put at the end, which is fine to wait to the end, but I would need to make a decision about a previous section and then get to one of the questions at the very bottom, and then it's like, oh, maybe that related to something we already voted on, so I know that you'll check to make sure we're not closing the door on something that's coming out.
And if that were to happen, we'll just revisit it. These aren't, I think we can, they're not binding in the sense that we can always go back and revisit. So you're right, and I mean, we may not know what those are yet. So if that happens, the reality is whatever we end up with is gonna be blessed definitively by this group by vote. Both in pieces in its entirety. I can envision a time where I say, okay, maybe we said all the sections, but let's take one final vote. Is this accurate? Does this reflect your preference? We're going to the council and you'll have an opportunity.
Just to be clear, what you said, it is binding once we take a vote, what you're saying is everything is gonna come back to us in the final report for a second vote, so we'll have
Yes.
another opportunity to revisit.
Right, but if, for example, this group found out new information, they could also motion to reopen that and
Yes.
revisit it.
Absolutely,
That's what I meant.
yes.
So since we're gonna go back and look at 2.01 next week.
Yeah.
2 weeks, in 2 weeks, we had previously had a discussion about how districting is done and then it goes to the planning commission and it's not a political process, it's done independently by this third party. I saw in 2018, which wasn't a bullet point, it now goes, it's either done by state law, which is not really state law, it's the laws of Florida, the proper situation, doesn't matter, or it goes to city council by ordinance. And my question is, if it goes to city council by ordinance, do they have discretion to do something other than what the planning commission put forth? And if that is the case, then my opinion on everything you said changes.
Could that be a topic for discussion with the planning commission on that?
I think it's a legal question that I'd like to refer to Scott Steady.
Okay,
I'd like to know whether or not he reads that as if it goes to the city council by ordinance, or they told it's ministerial and they just need to adopt what the planning commission did, or do they get to completely change it, because the language is not clear to me, that's really important to me. About, it's a completely different setup.
What section is it?
2.01 redistricting, planning commission has always historically done it, and maybe that's the intent of the language still. But now all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, as they went through a very lengthy process of charter review and voted on by the people, it now goes back to city council by ordinance, maybe.
If you make a motion.
I was gonna say, yeah, maybe we do that so I can add it to the list.
Okay, I'm making a motion that we ask Scott Steady whether or not, in section 2.01, whether or not the redistricting goes back to city council by ordinance, and if the answer to that is yes, whether city council has discretion to do something other than what the planning commission voted on.
Second that motion.
And I just, it's moved properly seconded. Any discussion? Sorry.
Discussion.
Oh, we do.
Aye.
All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay.
Can I just ask one more question?
Thank you, so we'll come back.
There's some, I'm not very familiar with, there's some litigation that the city is involved in, I believe over the past 2 weeks. There was an opinion that was issued by a court,
Came out of this one.
and could we just ask, Ken to give a 5-minute or less overview of the actual ruling?
Yeah, I actually have a client alert going out tomorrow on that, so I could forward that to everybody and.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
We need a motion for that.
I think so, yeah.
We'll say without even.
Yeah, I heard, we don't
There's a
need,
case.
we don't need a motion for you to do that.
That one's already in the can, so it's.
Yeah, no, but I guess. For you guys.
I think he said he's gonna do it without a motion.
I do think that we should discuss what the opinion was too, because the charter was mentioned, the city charter was mentioned several times. So I think it's important for what it said and what they're looking at.
It's also one of the questions from council. This council's asking us if we should discuss making it explicit that council does not have judicial powers. And I think in that opinion, it talked about how the council does absolutely not have judicial powers.
When that gets to our minutes review, can you flesh that out with being more specific about it, because I'm not privy to it. Thanks. Okay, any other new business before we adjourn?
All right, I'll save it, I won't.
All right, good.
You know,
All
you're
right.
taking it out.
All right, let me see what I have to say. If there's no further questions or any more new business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
It's been properly seconded, and we adjourn the meeting at 8:42 p.m.
If you take the name tag, you have that.
We just gotta, let's do, because they were saying.